Welcome to the Unfiltered Show from the Score Studios. My name's Joseph Casciaro. In studio guests today, friends of the show, Lou, Alex Wong of the Hello and Welcome podcast. What's going on, fellas?
Hello and welcome, my friend. What's going on, man? Anything for you, Cash.
Yeah, happy to have you guys. Right back at you.
How do you say hello in Italian?
Ciao.
Oh, okay, ciao. Yeah.
Well,
Ciao,
depending on
but-
what time of the day it is.
Benvenuti, I think.
Could be buongiorno.
Buongiorno,
if it's
I
at
like
the end
that
of the
one.
night. But
Yeah.
Okay.
ciao to both of you. Feel
What's
like
up, man?
sound like Dominic Premucci right now. But no, but ciao. Anyway, no monologue today. I wanted to get right into it. We got a
Okay,
lot to
let's
cover, a lot of off-season moves to cover, a big off-season move in Toronto, non-player related to cover, a bit of an NBA rule change maybe coming when it comes to stats. A lot of stuff to talk about today. Before we get to all that, we did have an actual trade this week, including a former Raptor, Norman Powell going from LA to Miami. John Collins going from Utah to LA. So on the surface, this move kind of looks like the Heat got the best player in the deal in Norman Powell without giving much up. The Clippers maybe solve their quest for a 4. Win-win all around, or you think this is just Miami's win and everyone else is kind of there?
I mean, Miami wins, I think, by default because they gave up very little that they really need, right? Like Kyle Anderson. I think there was another year left on this deal, too. So they even get off a bit of long-term money with him. Kevin Love, again, they're not really using him. He's a buyout candidate. Unless Utah really does hold on to 7 white bigs, which is kind of incredible. That can't be an accident. But that's all they paid for Norm. And then a second-round pick, which, who cares? You know what I mean? And Norm is still, a very productive guy. I think that the key with Norm is just he's going to score for you. He is going to be he's turned himself into a really efficient 3-point shooter. He plays great in transition. But I think maybe the concern is when the game slows down and you got to defend and your playmaking becomes a little bit more important. That's where I think the Clippers ran into a bit of issue where Norm was fantastic in the regular season. He held it down when Kawhi was out, and then when it came time to the playoffs, he was much more up and down. But that's normal. And again, you paid such a small price to get Norm. So I think Miami's clearly a winner here. I think Bam's going to have to do a lot of defending on his own because he's got to cover up for Tyler Hero and also Norm.
Is that their starting backcourt? Tyler Hero, Norm Powell. That's their starting backcourt, right?
Honestly, I think Norm's actually best as a 6-man. I think he's actually really good as a 6-man. I think that you have Davion Mitchell there who can then...
Oh, yeah, fine. And they just did re-sign him. Yeah.
And you need Davion to cover up for whoever the toughest
fair
guard
enough.
assignment is anyway. So it's not bad.
That's not a bad 3-man guard rotation if you're a middling East team.
Yeah, it's going to be great for the
Mitchell,
play-in.
Norm,
They're gonna
back to the play-in.
They're going to run the play-in with that one for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna zag here and say this is a huge loss for the Miami Heat here because when I think of Sleepy Pat Riley and the Miami Heat, they like to go big star hunting, right? We know about LeBron in the Big 3. They were able to pivot to Jimmy Butler. They were talking about Dame Lillard a couple of years ago. I think there were some whispers about Kevin Durant maybe this offseason, but I guess Pat didn't want to give up, Jaime Jaquez Jr. and some of his other pieces. And now you end up with Norman Powell. We know Norm's a great player. He had a great first half. He was making a push for an all-star spot. But if this is your big acquisition in the offseason for Miami, I'm not that excited about this team going into next season.
Yeah, I think it's if you're just looking at the deal in a vacuum, you could say it's a win because, like I said, they got the best player in it without giving much up. But yeah, big picture, if you kind of look at what the Heat's grand plans were and also what that franchise and what Pat Riley's supposed to be about, if you look at it from that perspective, yeah, it's a loss. On the Clippers side, everyone assumes that this was clearing the way to a Bradley Beal acquisition if and when Bradley Beal is bought out by the Suns. That's what everyone's saying. Okay, they again, I'm not sure how much of that quest for a 4 John Collins solves. He can do solid things, but
he's fine.
He's fine. There's some emptiness to his game, but whatever. He'll be fine there. But I think a lot of people looked at it more okay, but now they've gotten rid of Norm, who was super useful for them for large stretches of the year. It was their second best player. And now you kind of have a hole there at the 2 spot. Bradley Beal's expected to be bought out. The Clippers were one of the teams, along with Miami, rumored, and the Warriors rumored to be in on him. So if we envision the Clippers with Bradley Beal in Norm Powell's place and with John Collins now, and you kind of project this team going forward, Brook Lopez there now as well, how much better and, I don't know, closer to a title are the Clippers today if Beal's there compared to what they were a month ago?
Look, Bradley Beal's value has come down a lot, but I still think that if you had to give me a player between Bradley Beal and Norm, I would say it's close enough where, you're it's not like a huge sort of like drop off.
Yeah.
If anything, you can maybe even get a little bit, tiny bit better. Because like I think the biggest deal with Bradley Beal is just like the fact that his contract was so onerous and it had the no trade clause in it. I mean, maybe we'll see if he actually will get bought out and he will eventually go to LA. He's not going to get traded there. It's too much money. But I think, you saw with the Clippers in the first round, they pushed the Nuggets to 7 games. They were favored on that one. We all sat on this couch back in April. I think we all picked the Clips to beat the Nuggets at that time, who were in a lot of turmoil. That you need size. You do really need size. I think that John Collins gives you more of that. But again, like how much of this just comes down to is Kawhi going to be healthy, and also is James Harden actually not going to turn into a pumpkin this time?
Yeah.
And like it's almost like shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. It's like your fundamental core is just not strong for the Clips, and it's been that for like 6 years now.
Well, I think the question for Kawhi is almost moved past whether he's healthy to even when he's healthy, like, is he that guy? Like, I don't know if we saw enough of that in that first round series against Denver. And yeah, James Harden, I still believe in James Harden. I think year 19 will be the year that he finally turns it around. And if I'm Bradley Beal,
I believe in James Harden in 2 situations: October through March, and after 11 p.m.
And when there's COVID restrictions, but strip clubs are still open.
Yeah, those are the only times
I will bet on James Harden to put out Wilt Chamberlain numbers, and we will have footage of it. I'm a big player empowerment guy, but Bradley Beal is making the case that we should no longer hand out no trade clauses because we've seen the disaster. If I'm Bradley Beal, I stay in Phoenix, collect my money, create a toxic work environment. Why would I want to get bought out? It's chill in Phoenix. I'm going to go to the Clippers, go to the Warriors, and suddenly I'm in the spotlight. I actually have to work really hard now and be available. So, but to answer your question, I agree with Will. It's like I trust the Clippers to be a really good regular season team. Like Ty Lue has shown that, like even with last season's roster. But John Collins doesn't move me. Bradley Beal doesn't move me. Bringing back Chris Paul would be like a cool story in his final season. But yeah, Harden and Kawhi, can't trust those guys in the playoffs. But I'll be back in on them by the playoffs next season. Yes.
I think I agree with both you guys on all that. But I think the biggest thing they did this offseason was actually probably sign Brook Lopez. Like I think Brook Lopez being a backup center, like being a reserve center behind Ivica Zubac, giving them like a bit of a different look as like a 3-and-D kind of, floor spacing, rim protector in 15 to 20 minutes a night. I think for this stage of his career, that's pretty good. And I think that's a pretty good two-headed monster at the 5 with Zubac and Lopez.
Absolutely.
I think they're a more balanced team now, right? If you with Lopez, with Collins, with or without Beal, I mean, I think it hurts to lose Norm.
Yeah.
I think they're more balanced. I still don't think they're going to be a title contender in the end because of the same questions we were just talking about.
Well, I mean, the only thing with the Lopez thing is like, absolutely, like that's a fantastic backup center. But Zubac is like their second best player, like a lot of nights now, a lot of nights. Like it's
some nights he's their best player.
Some nights he's their best player because obviously Kawhi's not there a lot of time. You know what I mean? So you probably want him to be playing like 30, even to 35 minutes, and so like. Yeah, the backup center minutes last year were definitely upsetting when it was like Ben Simmons is in the game now with Derrick Jones Jr. and they're running dribble handoffs to each other. So it's like, fine, that's definitely an upgrade. The one thing I would say is those guys are, as much as Zubac is great defensively, both drop bigs. And I think that's where maybe you get John Collins in to give you a bit more of a small ball look, depending on the matchup. But I don't know. Also, people haven't really watched John Collins in 2 years since he got traded to Utah, basically.
Always been a bit of
John Collins is like a Diet Coke Jeremy Grant, man. You just don't hear about him. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, let's talk about the real offseason winners and losers. All due respect to the Heat and the Clippers, not the winners of this offseason. I know like who you guys are going with because you've already sent me your notes before. Will, I want to start with you because you're going out of you're coming out of left field here.
Zagging.
With your definitely zagging.
Okay.
Zigging. Okay. Who is your offseason winner and why?
Yeah. My winner is the New York Knicks.
Man, you really hate Tom Thibodeau, eh?
No, it's not. The coaching is like whatever. I think they probably upgrade. I think Mike Brown definitely can bring some. If he can do to the offense what he did in Sacramento, to do that in New York and sort of implement more passing into the system, that'd be great because that was not a passing team. My thing is, look, the bigger picture is the East was supposed to be wide open, right? I mean, like, all due respect to all the injuries, I hope all the guys are okay with the Achilles. But if you're the Knicks, you're like, okay, who was in our way? The Boston Celtics? They're out the way now because of the Jason Tatum injury. And honestly, they were kind of beating them down even with Jason Tatum healthy. And then it was like, okay, Indiana, who's beating us 2 years in a row. Well, guess what? They're also kind of out the way. So even from that perspective, that's not really an off-season thing, but that's definitely a win for the Knicks. And I think the other part is just like, fine, there's this big gap in the Eastern Conference. Who's going to come up and take our spot? I mean, everyone talked about the East being open. Who really sees that chance?
Just Cleveland, I would say. Like Cleveland and New York. I mean,
even Cleveland. Like, I feel if I were the Knicks, I'd be pretty confident going against Cleveland. I've beaten them once before. I've seen that their level drops off a little bit in the playoffs. And you know, if it's up to me, I'm just like, look, I think that the Knicks came into this summer with a chance to. You know, it's a lot of uncertainty, and I think actually you feel better about them. I think the Knicks are actually favorites to come out of the East right now. And whatever, the minor moves, Yershon Yabusele and
that's a good
Jordan
Clarkson.
Clarkson.
Yo, honestly,
solid pieces.
And for not a lot of money, it's not like they overpaid either guys. Like
That's
even Clarkson, like that team needed depth. Like the Knicks needed more guys, and no one's sitting here saying Jordan Clarkson or Gershon Yabusele is gonna like change their season or play 30 minutes a night, but. For a team that just desperately needed more NBA caliber rotation players, they've got probably two from this offseason that can add depth to their bench. And in the case of Clarkson, okay, you never want to be the team that's like overpaying for like a microwave kind of streaky scorer that doesn't do a lot else. But if it's for the minimum, like what, worst case, he just sits like deep on your bench, and best case, he probably changes a few games for you this season on the minimum.
I'm just saying, big picture, the Knicks didn't really have to do much, and now they're favorites.
That's fair.
That's pretty good.
I'm calling it right now. Jordan Clarkson gonna have a 2-week run, and it's gonna be Filipino sanity. I think it's gonna because Jordan Clarkson is the exact type of player that's gonna get the Madison Square Garden crowd juiced coming off the bench.
Right, he's like their Jamal Crawford.
Exactly.
That type of
and I
player.
think he's gonna go become a fan favorite and go on a 2-week run, and he's gonna land on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Yeah.
Wow,
that's my prediction.
Pablo Torre.
Another
story coming your way.
Also, don't disrespect Jay Huff. I think the Pacers will be in the running.
Yo, Jay Huff was one on my all nobody team last season.
I was just kidding.
Yo, Jay Huff actually can play. That dude can shoot, man.
I've seen his per 36 numbers compared to Miles Turner. It was very funny to me.
Yo.
You can't do per 36 if you never played.
Didn't he back up Orlando Merced on the Jays in '94?
Yo, nice reference. Also, does you said the cover of Sports Illustrated? Does Sports Illustrated actually publish a physical copy anymore?
We're gonna have to page Aaron Rose on that.
Yo,
Man. Aaron Rose
if
of
so,
Athletic
send them to the Score Studios. All right, Alex, who's your winner?
My winner. Well, first of all, I want to give an honorable mention winner to the Washington Wizards. I think, for me, I think they have a great collection of young and veteran players. Like they've got C.J. McCollum, they got Malcolm Brogdon,
Those are not wins.
they got
Malcolm
Chris.
Brogdon's part
They
of the
got,
Rockets.
they
I
got,
thought you were going to say just because they no longer employing Jordan Poole automatically makes them a winner.
yep, they got Chris Middleton, they got Marcus Smart, and then they have a bunch of young players who are pretty exciting as well. And I think such as Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly.
And?
This is great.
No, but all I'm saying is the East is wide open in a sense that I think one of these teams that you don't expect to make the playoffs or play in can make a jump. And I'm here to say that the Wizards are going to be a top 6 team next year.
What?
They are going to storm.
Whoa.
They are going to storm up the Eastern Conference standings. Check on Jan 6, man. You'll see.
My
You'll
goodness.
see. But my real winner of this offseason is, I guess this is a pretty obvious choice. I went with the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, of course.
For me, like they're already very close to a championship. Won it 3 years ago now, and took OKC to 7 games, like a legit 7-game series that they had a chance of winning. And I thought I thought they would never get it out of the Michael Porter Jr. contract, and they were able to do that and get Cam Johnson. And is Jonas Valanciunas deciding to stay now?
It was Panathinaikos that he was trying to go with because they apparently gave him an offer.
Hey, but the Nuggets can just say no.
Yeah, and the reports are that's what they're doing.
Fair.
They're saying we're not doing that. And
JV, Bruce Brown.
JV would be the best backup center they've had in the Jokic era. I know that's not saying much, but
it's a DeAndre Jordan bar. So, but
it's like a Mason Plumlee.
No, but I think just the move of Porter to Cam Johnson and getting that kind of reliability, consistency at that position, and we know what Jokic can do. I think they're right there with OKC as co-favorites in the West next season. So I thought they did a great job.
No, they absolutely did. Like that was a team like the Knicks needed more depth. They needed more shooting. They replaced Michael Porter Jr. with a guy that, in my opinion, is a better overall player. Even if he's not as pure a shooter, better overall player who makes half as much for a team that was like right up against the different aprons. So they managed to pull that off and then find the flexibility to add the depth because of what they just did with the Porter
Even like
deal.
a Tim Hardaway
That's
Jr.
what I'm saying,
like,
man. Team that needed shooting, added Tim Hardaway Jr., replaced Porter with Cam Johnson. That's at worst a wash, cheaper player. Bring back Bruce Brown.
That's great.
To the place where like he thrived like he's never thrived before in his career. Obviously, the perfect type of role player to play off of Jokic. Like I think that's a team that's now like addressed a lot of their issues, is deeper, is more balanced, and they did it while saving money. Instead, like that, like just an A+ offseason.
No, because you look at the Nuggets, and it's just like, look, they've been trying to do this thing, and obviously, like they were super dysfunctional. And that's why both their head coach and their GM were fired the same day. Surprise meeting. You know what I mean?
A week and a half to go before the playoffs.
They're like, we're tired of you guys.
Their key card just stopped working on the 9th.
Oh, man, that's tough.
I love it.
So I think, the central complaint between the two of them was just like, Calvin Booth was trying to make them play all these young guys that he drafted. And Mike Malone was like, these guys, aside from Christian Brown, aren't playable. Like, for the most part, they're not playable. So it's like, what are we doing now? And they're actually taking this seriously. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Cam Johnson is definitely an upgrade over Michael Porter Jr., but it's just like you just need like 3 or 4 more marginal upgrades. And that's what they did. Like, Bruce Brown, as good as like Julian Strawther was for like a game, I trust Bruce Brown because I've seen him do it in the finals. This guy's like the defining Jokic merchant, man.
Yeah.
He made $40 million off of just being good with Jokic.
And
now he's back home for the minimum.
100%. And when you employ a Nikola Jokic, like I get the idea, like with the Aprons now, you need to be careful of the way you're building a team.
Bro, come on.
You need infusion of youth and cheap contracts. I get all that. At the same time, you employ the best player of his generation in the absolute prime of his career. You're not going to get a chance to compete annually like this, maybe ever again.
You're also the Nuggets, man. Like,
that's
stars
insane.
don't even come to you like
exactly.
that.
So like you better be taking advantage of it. Like, yeah, it's great to think of what Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson could be, but like you need guys who can give you playoff minutes right now, not 3 years from now.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I know all the nerds love to crunch all the stats and stuff, but for me, all that matters is the Nuggets just need to get better in those like small pockets of non-Jokic minutes, like in the playoffs. And I think they have a roster now that should probably be able to be strong. And look out for my guy Zeke Naji too, man. I'm really high on him coming into next season.
Repping Zeke Naji and the Washington Wizards.
Alex dug deep into his research for this show. Man. I'm impressed. I mostly agree with everything. I agree that the Nuggets are a winner. The only thing I don't agree with is them being second best in the West now, because the most improved team of the offseason and the second best team in the West are the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
The team that's
a pretty good winner.
A team that was already a 50-win team, elite, number 2 defense in the league, that had one glaring issue, and it was half-court offense. And they solved that by acquiring Kevin Durant without giving up any of their great young players. And anyone who's watched the show knows what I think about Jalen Green. He was not one of their best young players. The fact that they plugged that hole with that player at the price that they did it, to me, made them already probably the winner of the offseason, probably already the most improved team in the West when they were already second in the West in the regular season. And then they supplement it by adding Dorian Finney-Smith. And I know, listen, maybe a little bit of the Lakers' exceptionalism led to Dorian Finney-Smith maybe being a little overrated or whatever, but we've seen him be a solid role player for
totally
good teams
playable.
in Dallas, in LA. When you're talking like the 3-and-D wing type, probably the best on the market this summer. I know it wasn't a great market, but still, like they added a very solid role. We talk about guys who can play in the playoffs. He's one of them. Like they added a solid 3-and-D player after acquiring Kevin Durant. Like I think this is a team that's taken the biggest jump probably in the league overall, definitely in the Western Conference. And yeah, like the way I look at it now is OKC is still the class of the West, but between Houston and Denver for that 2 spot, it's a legit race. And the Rockets went, to me, from just being the second best team in the West by the regular season standings to actually the second best team in the West by like postseason ceiling.
This is going to be a really fun team because I feel like low-key last year, the best thing besides defense that they did was just offensive rebound, like one of the best offensive rebounding teams we've ever seen. And then they tripled down on that with even more centers. They obviously retained Steven Adams, but they got Clint Capella as well.
Clint Capella's just like their third string center.
Also, Kevin Durant's 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
So, like, even though he's older, he could still get a board as well for you. It's just like they could honestly put together lineups where it's like, I probably Fred, I guess, but then like 4 7-footers. Like you put Jabari Smith and like Kevin Durant together and 2 centers on the floor with Şengün and Adams. Like that's a realistic thing. Plus, they lock up like their structure because I think that like for a young team, you can't abandon that. And I think anybody in Houston will tell you that it was Ime Udoka along with Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks that took one of the most unserious teams in the past to in this situation where they're actually now expected to contend. And obviously you lose Dylan Brooks, which you do replace the player somewhat with Dorian Finney-Smith. but then you still get Fred VanVleet back on a cheaper deal, and you lock up Ime Udoka long term. Like, I think as long as you have that brain trust in place, like, it's gonna be a really exciting team to watch. Because even if they brick, they're probably gonna get their own miss like half the time.
100%.
Yeah, I think the KD move reminds me a lot of when the Raptors got Kawhi, in that they got that extra piece without having to give up a lot. And no disrespect to DeMar, but like they fixed the exact problem that they needed, and now everyone falls into place, right?
Yes.
Şengün doesn't have to be that number one guy in the playoffs. Fred doesn't have to launch like 25 shots to try to carry the offense. And then guys like Amen Thompson, like Tari Eason, even Dorian Finney-Smith. Like Dorian Finney-Smith doesn't need to be like the best defender on that team. Like he just slides in, right?
Yeah.
And then they have so much depth. So yeah, no, Houston. Yeah, shouts to Tillman Fertitta, man. He's doing a great job over there in Houston. So
From fraud to now all of a sudden being a legit Paisan.
from delivering all the food in the bubble to possibly delivering a championship.
Honestly, man. And
They done well.
the Brooks the Brooks replacement is a big thing too, because I think Eason is ready to step into a bigger role, and
Yeah,
that guy's a
for
defensive
sure.
menace.
Yeah.
Amen Thompson might be an all-star this year. Like that guy was knocking on the door last year. If not, he'll be the favorite to win most improved player. Like
Sure.
they've got guys ready to fill the defensive hole left from Dylan Brooks. And the thing with KD too, that length alone makes him like not a bad defense. You know, like he can turn it up defensively still.
Yeah.
And so I think that team will be fine. Before we move on to losers, just two other teams I wanted to shout out. The Hawks and the Magic in the East.
Sure.
The Magic, I talked about them a few weeks ago, training for Desmond Bane. I like that gamble for them, even with the picks. I think he solves a lot of their issues. Also, low-key, I think them getting Tyus Jones is big. They needed like a pure point guard.
Yeah.
And a guy who can like back up Jalen Suggs, share the court with Suggs or Bane,
Right.
can shoot, takes care of the ball like that. And then for the Hawks, obviously, one, getting that unprotected Pelicans pick,
Yep.
getting Nickeil Alexander-Walker, getting Kristaps Porzingis in like a buy low trade. I think this I know, but let's
That's like a 50-50.
it is, but the way I look at it is like they've quietly been building a better defensive infrastructure around Trae Young the last year or two, and I think we started to see it pay off. I think they've doubled down on that now. I think Alexander Walker is a terrific ad for them, and I think they achieved the very rare feat of improving in the short term and the long term because
Yes.
I think they're ready to like compete in the East in a wide open East. Like I would not be shocked if they're a top 4 seed.
Yeah.
But they also they're not all in on the present, and they have probably the most attractive 2026 traded draft pick in that they're going to get the most favorable of the Bucks or Pelicans 2026 pick. So I think another team that like just had a home run offseason. Anytime you can get better in the short and long term.
Yeah, that is impressive. I think the other thing too is just like they were so Trae Young reliant that I think it did limit them sort of in the end, and that's sort of like maybe been what's holding them back. And it's just like if they get Jalen Johnson healthy again, he can create more of his own offense so that Trae doesn't have to do everything. And then we'll have to see. It's like a make or break year for Trae. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like he's coming up on
100%.
like a big contract extension for himself as well. And it's just like if you do all this, you get all the great defenders around him, and you still get hunted on defense, and that's still what sinks you in the playoffs. Then that's where for the Hawks it's just like okay, we have long term questions to answer. But
Yeah,
for
I
now it
think-
looks good.
I think Adam Silver should step in and move Joe Dumars back to the league office after that trade because
Just
Joe,
like-
Joe Dumars is just not operating properly in the year 2025 here. So as a general manager, I don't know how it can get worse for the Pelicans right now. So
Okay.
yeah, but shout out to the Hawks and the Magic. I think they will push the Wizards for that 6th seed.
Yeah, man. It's gonna be right there,
guys, the
man.
Wizards
Well,
last
when it's
killing
Kelly Olynyk versus Kristaps Porzingis.
Oh man.
Oh, the Wizards have Kelly Olynyk too.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
the
God.
Eastern Conference. That's the Eastern Conference playoff race in a nutshell. Okay, I'm going to use that to segue to our losers topic because you mentioned the Pelicans, and I had them as my biggest
Oh, okay,
loser
yeah.
because this is a team that, like, first of all, they needed to figure out which direction they need an identity. They need to figure out which direction they're going. First, they don't get the lottery luck they were hoping for, right?
Yep.
Then they, on draft night, are so enamored with Derek Queen, which, look, like, I'm not a big Derek Queen guy, but I'm also not going to pretend that I watch college ball
sure.
all year. Hey, maybe he ends up being
He's a talented
star.
guy.
He's a talented guy.
talented for sure.
But they're so enamored with him that they give up an unprotected 2026 first-round pick to move up 10 spots to get him when they themselves, at the very best, are a play-in team at the West. If everything breaks right, they're a play-in team. And most likely they're not and are like a bottom 5 to 10 team in the league. In a loaded draft class, and they gave up that pick when they are a team without an identity, without a direction. They also acquired Jordan Poole. Like, there is just a mishmash of like shit here where you're like, what is this? But even if Zion Williamson defies the odds and stays healthy, which we know that's not going to happen.
come
We
on,
know it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But even in a best case scenario, if he did, what are they? Like at best, a play-in team that still has a very murky future, and they gave up unless Derek Queen is legit like a superstar in the making, they've set their franchise back years. In a market where, by the way, they can't afford to do that.
You know, the weird thing with the Pelicans is like they do have players that like I like. You know, like Trey Murphy's there.
Yeah.
You know,
Jones.
I think Herb Jones. You know, Jose Alvarado. Like even Zion. Like I think like still even in his current condition, a lot of teams in the league would take that gamble on Zion. But I just like look at the whole team on paper. I'm like, who really? What is this? You know what I mean? Like, what actually is this team? Like, what is the goal of this team? Like, what should be the expectation of this team? I like their young guys. You know, if you really want to pivot around Fears and Queen, like I think those are two of the most two guys with like some of the highest offensive ceilings in this draft. But again, like they're not gonna be able to showcase that in a situation where Fears is also super young. Like. And he's like 180 pounds, and then his vet is now Jordan Poole. Like, you've actually look. I want him to succeed, but you've really made it as difficult as possible for him. So,
yeah, it's tough for the Pelicans. You know, I take back what I said about Joe Dumars because like we've all given up an unprotected first for a queen before in our lives. So shouts to all the queens out there.
Fire.
So recycled joke.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Get on the
It's
Hello
all
and
good.
Welcome
You
podcast.
start
But
first.
yeah, no, the Pelicans. It's looking really dire. I thought they were gonna zag and maybe like move on from Zion and just kind of like rebuild because like. For them to commit now to Jordan Poole and make all of these other moves, like I don't know what direction they're heading in.
I don't think they do either.
Yeah.
They just keep making moves. Like, what's DeJounte Murray doing there?
No, but Joe Dumars has
Isn't he
been
recovering
there.
from an Achilles injury?
So I'm saying, like, what is?
No, I know.
What are they
I
trying
know.
to do?
No,
with
but
this
Joe
roster?
Dumars has been there for like what, a month, and he's already destroyed this team. Get him back to the front office. He was doing a great job suspending Draymond Green. Like, he was doing a great job.
That was his shtick.
Yeah, what are
he
you
had
doing?
found his angle. You know,
And now he acquired the guy who Draymond punched.
Yo,
Like, what are we
legit, I
doing,
didn't
man?
know that. 3 degrees of Draymond.
Fired
Green
up.
there. But for real, like this was a very unserious team and unserious franchise that added the most unserious player in Jordan Poole, took a massive gamble on a high upside but low floor guy in
Still a
Derek Queen.
13th
Like,
pick,
you know, like
yeah.
it's
Who is their coach, may I ask?
Willie Green still, right?
It's still Willie Green?
I think.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, okay.
I honestly probably not for long, and I don't mean that. Like,
Sure,
I don't
sure.
think
Yeah,
Willie
because
Green's the best
he was
coach.
inherited as a coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was inherited, and now they're in this weird situation where there is pressure to win this year, to at least make the
Yeah,
playoffs, because they can't be giving up a top pick. But they also have these young guys that they probably wanted. I don't. It's just a weird situation.
Yeah.
Anytime you're that directionless, it just leads to like confusion between the front office and the coach. And I don't think Willie Green's long for that job, regardless of whether he's a good coach or not.
Yeah. No, they just need to reset, man. Like their roster feels like if you just like randomized the NBA and like, you just have 15 random guys.
Joe
on the team.
Dumars, man, go get Darko Milicic, man. Just run it back.
Goodness.
All right, Will, you also went off the board with
Yeah, I
your
did.
loser.
What is
You
this?
You stayed
That's
in
right.
New York City. Who's the biggest loser of the offseason?
Not the
man.
Nets.
Oh man,
Oh,
call
my
me Frank
God.
Isola. No, I mean it's the Nets, man. Listen, the Nets came into this offseason as the
Josiah
only
over
team with cap space. Okay, like they could have opened up, I think, around $50 million in cap space.
Yeah.
Right. Their roster, obviously, after coming off a tanking year, they have nobody that there's no centerpieces. Right. Their best player was Cam Johnson. They flipped that into Michael Porter Jr.
Unbelievable. And they got a pick out of it?
They got a
a
distant
single
pick out of it, which
Yeah.
I don't know. The way Sean Marks has been dodging bullets, he probably won't be around to actually make that pick. But like their roster, and then of course they go out and get additional first rounders for this year's draft.
Right.
They come out of it with 5 first rounders. Has that ever happened before?
Literally,
where
no.
A team picks 5 because everyone thought, okay, you got all these first rounders, you chase Giannis, right? That was the whole thing. There were stories in the New York Post of like, like Giannis is Sean Marks' white whale. Giannis not even available. Giannis spent all summer playing soccer with his family in Brazil and now swimming on a beach in Greece. He's having a great time. He's not
Giannis
stressing
is
about
so
anything.
unavailable that the Bucks essentially spent $50 million a year on Miles Turner and Dame Lillard's buyout. That's how unavailable Giannis is.
So the Nets are just like, all right, what do we do? Well, we got to use all 5 of these picks. Honestly, I'm not a draft expert, but like all these guys are kind of questionable to me.
And honestly, too many crying brothers going. Literally, too many brothers of draft picks crying on the Nets team. And by too many, I mean more than 0. 1. Was it Wolf's brother?
It was
Wolf's brother.
Danny Wolf's brother.
Yo,
and like
I'm
bro,
all for being happy for your family,
There's only one Wolf I would cry for. But I will say.
No, I just mean like, what did Brooklyn
no,
actually do? They had this huge opportunity, a lot of flexibility, more than anybody in the league, and they came out of it with just being like, all right, we'll salary dump a couple contracts for you.
No,
Meanwhile, we've also given up our best player in the process.
No, it was terrible, but that's anti-Asian discrimination though to go up against. Joe
and they wanted Hanson Yang too. That was like the whole thing was that like,
and they couldn't even get him.
The Chinese owner was gonna get Hanson Yang. Like this is not even like this is like a real thing they were gonna do. And then Portland is like, just kidding, we'll scoop you because even though you had 5 picks, only one of them was high enough at 8, which you weren't going to take him at 8. They already reached for Jaeger Demon. They're like, all right, we'll get Yang at 19, and then boom, they get swooped by Portland.
They had 5 first-round picks. They had a record-breaking number of first-round picks that they actually used all of, and they came out of the first-round pick without their guy.
Yeah,
how is that possible?
That's what
How
I'm
is
saying.
that possible?
No, I want to talk about like just Sean Marks's tenure with like Brooklyn. He's been there through I think like 4 eras now.
Yeah.
Like he rebuilt that team after that Paul Pierce KG trade.
Yeah.
He got the big 3 there with Harden, Kyrie, KD, and then Kyrie opened his third eye and that was it. And now this like I actually think Sean Marks has done a good job through like these different eras, but it's like at some point, I feel like you actually just have to deliver results. And now they're stuck in this position where who's their most appealing player? Like Cam Thomas?
No, have you seen
Nick
their depth chart? Their depth chart looks nuts.
Yeah,
man.
and what's their plan? Like, what is actually their plan going forward?
No, I mean, their plan is to restock assets.
Yeah.
And then that way, when Giannis does become available
Or whoever
eventually,
it is
or like,
that-
you know what I mean, like flip it. Because that's the history of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Right? They go star hunting. They do a good job of landing stars, and it never works out.
Yeah.
So, like, that's probably what they're pivoting towards. But, like, man, in the meantime, I'm like, what do you even have? Like, this might be one of the most unwatchable teams next year.
Oh, yeah.
Is the Brooklyn Nets.
I will say this. I also said that about them a year ago, and then Jordy Fernandez somehow had this team playing like competitive
he's a good
ball.
coach.
I think
He's a
if
good
there's
coach.
one thing they found, it's a head coach.
Right, and they're torturing him. With
Yeah,
this
exactly.
process. He has 5 rookies for
That's what
you,
he
buddy.
gets for this leaving Canada. That's what he gets for abandoning team. No, I'm kidding.
51st state
Love
talk
Jordy
over
Fernandez. Great coach. All right, Alex, before we move on, tell us why the Lakers are the biggest. Wizards' biggest winner? No. Why are the Lakers the biggest loser?
Well, Lakers for me, like going, landing Luka was a huge deal for them last season, and things look so good, right?
When's he going to extend, by the way? I feel
like,
the contract's been on the table for a minute.
Now he lost his best friend, Dorian Finney-Smith. Too.
Yeah, so you get Luka going to the playoffs. I mean, rewind the tape for diehard Unfiltered show fans. Like I picked the Lakers to make the finals. I was really high on just the Luka LeBron combination. They flame out in the first round. JJ Redick plays his starters for that whole second half in Game 4, crashes out. And then you go into the offseason, like you mentioned, they lose Dorian Finney-Smith, which for this team, they can't really afford to lose any
They don't have a lot
valuable
of players now.
rotation pieces.
Got Jake LaRavia, though.
They canceled.
Wow.
He's no J Huff. He can't. They canceled the Mark Williams trade last season, and now they're scouring for a center. And their big pickup is DeAndre Ayton, like one of the most unreliable guys you can have in this league. And then LeBron opts in, and Rich Paul basically says the Lakers are rebuilding, and LeBron would like to win next season. So now there's that talk. So I don't know where the Lakers are at. They've suddenly gone from a team that I think we had pegged as like maybe even like a dark horse sleeper contender, and now I don't even know. Like, are they a play-in team in the West next season if you stack them up against everyone?
They weren't that far from the play-in.
Yeah.
That's how competitive the West is.
Yeah, exactly. Also, DeAndre Ayton, unreliable, unserious. DeAndre Ayton, there's 2 options for his next team once this experiment in LA doesn't work out, and it's the Wizards or the Pelicans. Like that, DeAndre Ayton.
I thought you were going to say the Shanghai Sharks, my brother.
Honestly, that's next. That's after the Wizards or the Pelicans.
What are the Lakers without a temperamental center, though? This is, it's kind of perfect.
But nothing about this roster excites me. Like, I look at, like, Luka, of course. Like, we know what Luka can do, but, like, this is not a good roster.
Well, I do like that Luka is, like, all the pictures, he's getting smaller and smaller. Like,
yeah, Luka's doing his part, man. He's
Like,
losing
is
weight,
there a
but-
chance, and I'm not saying the Luka trade was right, because we didn't know that the Mavs are going to, get the bounce on the lottery balls and get Cooper Flag.
Oh, yeah.
But there's
it worked out great.
There's a very realistic chance that Dallas has a better record than the Lakers next season.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I would still
I don't
pick,
think that's
I would still
kinda great, actually.
I would still pick the
So
Lakers, but
messy.
it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
And the Lakers, I think the perspective you came at is right in terms of like they went from what looked like back to being a contender and like this really clear direction the next few years, and now all of a sudden it's kind of murky. And the Ayton thing too, like I know there's some people who be like, yeah, but the upside, it's a 1-year deal technically because you got the player option. There's low risk.
Yep.
I get all that, but it's also like I don't
It's
know. Man,
low risk, low reward.
exactly.
Is the thing,
He's a low post player.
Yeah.
That he's not really a rim runner or rim protector, which is what Luka needs on both ends.
But he loves mid-range jumpers.
He loves mid-range. Like, it doesn't, even stylistically, even if you're thinking of like Ayton having a good season, his style of play still doesn't really fit with what the Lakers needed from a center outside of Luka Doncic. So I agree that I wouldn't call him the biggest loser, but I think they are one of the more disappointing teams of the offseason.
Oh, by the way, do you think this LeBron power play is going to work out, man?
LeBron has lost. There's no leverage anymore. Like LeBron's at the point of his career where there's no leverage.
And on the contract he's on, like at the salary he's on in this apron world at this stage of his career.
Well, the funny thing is when you opt in and then hold a gun to the team's head.
Right.
That's what
usually you hold the team's head.
That's
before
what
the
James
opt-in,
Harden
but-
did, but James Harden took the extra step and went to China and called out Daryl Morey. So,
he knew what-
so LeBron, I don't know what's the equivalent of calling out Rob Pelinka. Like, where does he go? West Hollywood?
Well, I mean,
And then he's just like,
No, but who's he even going to at this point? Because like there's new ownership coming in and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I think that's probably the biggest win for the Lakers. Is
Right.
like they'll actually have money to act like the Lakers again. But
yeah. Hey,
know,
LeBron,
I mean-
by the end of the next season, he could be on your Knicks, man. Like, he could be on the Knicks.
oh wow,
I could see that happening.
Okay, I
what's
think
the trade, LeBron for OG or something?
I think one thing I think is interesting is that because of the way in this new apron world and how punitive some of the rules in the CBA are, it's the most NBA thing ever where a LeBron James actually has to opt in to get to where he wants to go or to like get traded, because if he had opted out and become a free agent, there wouldn't have been teams with the money to give him what he
Brooklyn
wanted.
would have been right there.
You know, like
Brooklyn was
that
like,
would've been
hey,
a star.
Bron, don't you want to come play with Danny Wolf and Ben Sarah?
Oh man, and have Danny Wolf's brother crying over you.
Yo, a
82
king and a
times.
wolf is crazy, man.
But in all honesty, with the piece we were gonna have as our last segment of the day,
Yeah.
I want to move it up here to segment 3 because it actually fits perfectly with some of these losing teams we've been talking about this offseason. And I wanted to talk about Masai Ujiri with you guys. Now, obviously, it's been a couple weeks since the breakup between the Raptors and Masai, so I don't think we have to wax too poetic about that. I feel like all of us in our respective lanes and what we do and our respective jobs have probably talked and written or done enough videos about.
Hasn't it only been 1 week?
It's been 2, man. It's time
Two
to
now,
a week and a half.
Wow.
2 weeks
Now,
since that incredible
by all means,
Keith
if either of
Pelly
you-
press conference.
If
Oh,
either of you
man.
have thoughts on Masai leaving, I mean, my biggest one is you mentioned the Pelly press conference. I'm the one who asked Keith Pelly about if there's any concern about the Raptors losing some of the brand luster and culture that, as Keith Pelly said, Masai transformed here, especially in the league where that stuff matters most. And Keith Pelly's answer was essentially, if the brand and the culture that you created dissipates after you leave, then you didn't really create it in the right way, which it essentially is saying, hey, if we botch this now going forward, if we undo all of the good work Masai did, it's technically still Masai's fault because he clearly didn't create. So there's a lot we could say about how all that went down. But
Yeah. Was that a Winston Churchill quote that he used, by the way?
What Shakespeare play was that?
there's like I said, there's a lot. We could do an hour just on
He's
that
like,
press conference.
I don't respect the 2019
Yo,
championship. I respect 12th night, man.
Darko gonna show up to Trinity reading Hamlet?
He's gonna show up smoking a Churchill. But anyway, but there's also the other side of this, which is Masai Ujiri and what comes next for him.
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, they thought maybe, listen, this could be bigger than basketball for him. He's got Giants of Africa. He's got his political connections.
Yep.
Maybe he doesn't even need to go back to the NBA. Then he posts the tribute to Toronto, in which what a lot of people aren't talking about is there's a line in there where he says, my dreams of a second championship are alive and well. Of
course.
That guy's not,
course.
he can still do the other things, but he's gunning for another championship and running an NBA team. And so I wanted to talk about where we think Masai's next move might be. And I think there are some teams we brought up today that all could make sense. I'll name a few and then you guys feel free to add yours. But like Alex was talking about the Wizards, right? This is a team that if you remember a few years ago, it was reported that they were so enamored by him, they were willing to give up ownership stake or like franchise equity to bring him. What's stopping Ted Leonsis from offering him, head of Monumental Sports Entertainment, and you get to work down the street from the political powers that be?
He's going to list Barack Obama as one of his references on his resume.
Legit,
Not kidding.
So Washington, as much as
Bobby
people
Webster
might
has
laugh,
Andrew Schultz, so
as
who
much
has
as
a better
people
resume?
might
He
laugh
has us, actually.
and say like there's no way he would go to the Wizards, don't rule that out. Okay, then there's the Hawks, which reported they were in on him. Then there was a report they're no longer chasing him. I still say they have a vacancy at president. They're on the upswing in the short and long term, like we said. Their GM is actually Canadian raised. There's some I wouldn't be shocked to see him go there.
Okay.
Two more. We're talking about the Nets. Sean Marks has been there. I don't even think Sean Marks has done a bad job, but at some point, they've been trying to go big game hunting for so long. How about you start in the front office?
Wow.
The Lakers.
The Lakers
we were
will be
talking about.
interesting,
The reason I think the Lakers are an interesting one is
New ownership,
the
too.
ownership change.
Yeah.
In a cap-constrained NBA, you can't just flex that financial might on the roster, right?
Gotta
The way
be
they
smart.
do with the
You gotta be
Dodgers in
smart,
baseball.
yeah.
But you can flex it off the court.
Yeah.
Whether that's in the facilities you build, whether that's in the personnel you chase, front office
for
coach,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
So if they want to like start flexing that muscle and also be like, hey, Masai, how about we give you the biggest platform in all of basketball, one of the biggest in all of pro sports, to further your own interests, right? So those are a few I've come up with. And I'll just give you one more before I let you guys jump in.
Yeah.
You guys ever heard of the Oakview Group?
Yes, right.
You know what the Oakview Group is? It's a sports and entertainment venue development group led by, co-founded by one Tim Lewicki, that is currently the group trying to bring the NBA to both Seattle and Las Vegas.
Yeah,
Tim Lewicki being the man who brought Masai to Toronto in 2013.
Yeah.
Masai wants to bide his time, maybe not jump back into it, but thinking, there's probably a team in Seattle and Vegas coming.
You'd have to take a break for 2 years, but then you get great job security, like Sean Marks level job security. If you come in with the expansion,
and you get to build your own team from like the
scratch.
ground up and all that stuff. One team you didn't mention, I'm gonna throw in there, is the Dallas Mavericks.
Wow.
I think
Get Nico Harrison the hell out of
Yeah, I think Nico Harrison has an expiry date. I can easily see, if Ace Bailey has 2 great weeks, he'll trade Cooper Flag and 4 future first rounders for Ace Bailey in November. Like one more blunder from Nico, and I think the fans are going to get him out of here. Right now he's got a little goodwill because, the lottery balls were rigged for Dallas, but Masai's going to come in. I think Masai's going to come in and take over that front office. That's my prediction.
I like that prediction.
I think these are all great options. It speaks to sort of how much cachet Masai does have. I think that if based on his work in Toronto, the best thing Masai does is draft. So he should go to some team that actually has a lot of draft picks.
He should have replaced John Marks 2 weeks ago.
Brooklyn with the 5 first-round picks would have been perfect. Because Masai's a scout at heart. You know what I mean?
He talked
that's his
about that.
background.
Remember in April? He said,
That's his background. And it's like, that's why I don't think you'll actually take that long of a pause from the NBA, because it's just like, this is what he does. Like, he spends all his time, like, going overseas to obscure places and scouting. Like, that's how he does a good job. He's also a great trader as well. Obviously, he made the Kawhi trade. Before that, he was known for the Carmelo trade, right? In Denver. That was his first act as a general manager.
and the Bargnani trade.
The Bargnani trade. You know what I mean?
Fleeced
So,
the Knicks.
like, I think he is quite good at all these things, but for me, the other part too is I think the NBA also does need Masai in the league, whether that's like inside of the league office itself. Maybe he runs one of the operations that the NBA has. Honestly, Masai should be one of the commissioners, like in contention for like the next Adam Silver type of role, because he has this like bigger vision that you just don't see from other executives. He puts time, he puts effort into this, and I think the nice thing with him in Toronto was that number one, he had an ownership group previously before Rodgers took over the majority that backed all of his causes, including MLSC, which was actually, bankrolling and sort of paying in support of what Masai was doing in terms of the charities. But I think more importantly, he was in a situation where there was no pressure, no discomfort, no bad media, nothing. Like, everybody was just firmly behind Masai and everything that he wanted to do. I do wonder if he goes to a situation like the Lakers, for example. I mean, he's going to be screamed at every day on first take. You know what I mean? And the pressure's going to be on. And you don't have draft picks. So I think that, like, he has to choose it really wisely. But whatever happens, he's going to be back in the NBA. And if you watch that goodbye video, it's such a cool thing that he's able to be the same person with some kids in a summer camp that he can be with like presidents of the United States or the Prime Minister of Canada. Like, he is truly, truly special in that sense. And he's going to be very well sought after. And honestly, that thing is also a great resume too. If you watch that 6-minute video, I'm hiring that man.
Yeah, but I think the thing about him talking about wanting that second championship, I think the other question is just like, what kind of role would he want to take, right? Like, are you trying to be a day-to-day like basketball operations general manager, or are you trying to be a guy who maybe splits time between business and basketball and becomes kind of like a face of whatever team that you're on, right?
Well, then
like,
you got to hire a really good GM.
Yeah, I think Masai almost probably maybe wants that type of role because he has so many other interests, right? And a team would probably want to bring him in as much for his basketball knowledge, but also just to be the face, be out here like running all these other initiatives and things like that. So I could see him being on just like a president level, that type of role, maybe slightly removed from kind of like just working with Bobby here in Toronto.
That's why even like I know like again with the Wizards and stuff, people might laugh, but the fact that it could be something like you could run all of Monumental Sports, right? There's a WNBA team folded in there. We know about Masai's work of like empowering women in sports and stuff. So like I think there are opportunities out there that maybe even the average NBA fan who could only see him landing in like a big market might not see the vision, but from Masai's perspective, it probably fits. And then one I forgot to mention. I don't think Jerry Reinsdorf would ever pay up for an executive Masai's class, the owner of the Bulls and the White Sox. But if the Bulls ever wanted to start acting like the big market team that they are and get back to the glory days, I feel like that would be a good start.
Do you think
he's going to need a rich owner? So that's not going to be
fair enough.
Because Masai coming off the 2019 championship, if he was coming out to the market, he would be sought after by everyone. Do you think he's lost his luster? Do you think it's changed because of these past like 5 years?
I think there's no doubt he's lost some luster, but I still think. I think the resume and like the character,
just the name of it, the cachet of
the cachet of it, all that stuff. I still think that is just as powerful and
because from a basketball standpoint, there is an argument that the last 5 years
100%.
they've not run the team well. Yeah.
But I think for a lot of the franchises we're talking about, where it's like it's not just about bringing in a team builder; it's about bringing in that same brand and culture transformation that Keith Pelly talked about. It's about bringing that in, right? And bringing in some cachet and bringing in a guy where like literally just hiring him as soon as you send out that announcement already is like a sign to the league, hey, we're serious now. Like
credibility.
It's like I know I keep coming back to the Wizards, but seriously, like as much as we've been clowning the Wizards for decades, this team hasn't won 50 games since the 70s.
Watch out next year.
But it's for real. If the Wizards all of a sudden hired Masai Ujiri to run things,
of course,
you're telling me that wouldn't send
changes
alarm
everything. The
around
Wizards
the
are
league.
on the map now.
Exactly. Everyone looks at that and be like, holy shit, that team is serious now, right? And I still, from that perspective, I don't think any luster has been lost.
Okay.
Yo, what about Miami though?
Pat Riley
replacing Sleepy Pat,
man.
Because you can't just put any regular guy after that's Toronto's problem right now.
If I'm Masai, I'm not taking on that roster though. That's a tough roster.
But if you're a Masai and you've tried to go big game hunting in a market that's a little disadvantaged, and now you're like, hey, what if I take over for Pat Riley eventually and take over in arguably the most desirable market other than LA in the entire league?
Hey, Raptors fans, don't listen to this. What if Masai ends up on the Clippers?
Man, if Masai in a desirable market,
and he raises the Larry OB with Kawhi again, a 37-year-old Kawhi.
I gotta cut it there because any Toronto fans are unsubscribing and disliking this video.
I'm sick to my stomach.
Okay, real quick because I know I've kept you guys long enough already.
Whatever you need.
Kind of flew under the radar this week because of all the offseason moves happening. The NBA is experimenting with something in Summer League that they've experimented with in the G League already that everyone expects is probably going to be part of the NBA going forward. And that is that Heaves, at end of quarter Heaves in the first 3 quarters, shots from beyond the center circle that originate in the backcourt, I think it's like more than 36 feet out, in the first 3 quarters, final 3 seconds, will no longer count against a player's field goal percentage. If it's an unsuccessful attempt, it will be a team missed field goal instead of an individual. Do you like this? Do you think it's a little bush league for the biggest professional league in the world to be doing this? Thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I think the difficult thing is like there's incentives tied into players' contracts, right? So like, if a player needs to shoot 40% and get an extra $1 million or $2 million on their contract, like, they will obviously respond to that type of incentive. It does bother me, actually, as somebody watching. I'm just like, I want you to compete for every single minute out there, right? So, like, if you choose not to do this to save your stats, you are putting yourself above competing, which should be the number one thing.
You're a coward.
So, exactly, you're a coward. So that's why I respect, like, the great players like Steph, like, Jokic. These guys, like, Steph actively chases these type of shots. Even Peyton Pritchard freaking loves this kind of stuff. So I think it's a good thing. It's definitely not the number one item that I would fix the NBA, but it is a positive development. It's a positive development.
Who's the first player who's gonna do a heave and then tell the refs to measure and be like, "Yo, this actually doesn't count"? It's probably Jordan Poole. It's probably Jordan Poole. He'll be like, "Yo, I was actually within that uncounted for area." I actually like this because, like you mentioned, if guys like Steph and Jokic can throw up those heaves and not worry. Like, and you're a role player in there. Like, you you never know, man. That could be the difference between winning a
That's what I'm
game,
saying.
swinging you from the play-in. It's kind of like if you get the ball at the end of a shot clock and you heave a three that you don't really want to shoot. What's the difference?
Exactly.
It's also
What's the
more
difference?
entertaining when those shots go in. Like it's always a highlight if you.
I
if you
hate
make a
when the
half-court
guys
shot.
like
I know.
purposely dribble it out
And then shoot it
pretend they shoot,
Yeah.
but they know it's after the buzzer.
They really
Yeah.
think we're that dumb that like we can't
Yeah.
figure out what they're doing. Shout out Nikola Jokic because I know obviously Steph does it too, but
Yeah.
the fact like
Jokic
you
does it,
talk about
yeah.
a guy who literally only cares about other than his horses when he's on the court only cares about
Yeah.
winning and increasing his chances of doing so, even if it's an incremental
Yeah.
you know addition to those odds. 22 heaves last year, led the league. Nikola Jokic took so many end of quarter heaves that if this new rule were to come into effect and had been in place last year, his 3-point percentage would jump 3 full percentage points from 41 to 44. Okay, like
Yo, what?
he
Yeah,
led
that's
the
actually
league.
crazy.
He led the league in average 3-point attempt distance because he took so many heaves. That's a guy that genuinely does not give a crap about anything but winning and is not worried about, oh well, now my field goal percentage is going to go down if I take this. No, is it going to give my team a chance, however slight, of 3 extra points? I'm going to heave it. So shout out Nikola Jokic. I'll just say this: I don't think I'm on board with the NBA doing it. I like that the NBA is doing this because it's going to encourage players to do it. The Bush League part of it for me is that they have to do it.
I know.
Because so many players are cowards with this and are so worried about their 3-point percentage dropping point whatever. And some of them, fine, fair. It might be contractually related, but there's a lot of them that it's not a bonus in their contracts, that their 3-point percentage has nothing to do with their next contract. And like they're still doing it because they're so tied to that number. Just get out of here with that. But I applaud the NBA doing it because they recognize the cowardice of some of their players.
Who the hell in the league office decided this was the issue?
Right, they're like, man, we got to put our stamp down on end of quarter heaves and the
Joe
lack thereof.
Dumars gets out of there and things start getting done.
No, but that's the thing. It's just like I hate anything in sports that it's anti-competitive. You know, and like for example, like the NBA, I think is maybe especially guilty of this. You see this all the time. Star players who don't even have the best free throw percentage going to take the technical fouls when anyone can take it, because it's just like, oh, it's a concession to the star. It's not about the star. It's about the team winning and competing as high as possible. You know what I mean? Like there was a game this year where Scotty Barnes shot the technical free throws when Grady Dick was on the floor. Grady shoots 90%.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think they should fix is.
Although I see one where Jaden McDaniels took one actually when other stars were on the actual stars. Like I mean, Scotty would have definitely taken over Jaden McDaniels.
I think it should be. I think it should be an auto delay of game if an NBA player asks for a review and the coach doesn't review.
I like that.
Because like I'm so sick of players always asking for reviews, thinking that they didn't foul, and it puts the coach in a tough position because sometimes they have to appease the players. But then you got bench guys who are like, "Yo, that wasn't a foul." So we have to discourage players from like asking their coach to review.
Yeah, I like this.
So if they waive this and the coach doesn't do it, that's an auto delay of game. Yeah.
So if
I'm better than Joe Dumars.
I was gonna say, if you guys ever end hello and welcome, I know where Alex is going. He's going to replace Joe Dumars.
Yo, Mark Tatum, your time is up, bro.
What's wrong with Mark Tatum?
I'm taking his job.
In summary, for the Heaves thing, as Herm Edwards, at the time I think he was the Jets coach in the NFL, said famously in a press conference, "You play to win the game." Hello. More players need to realize that. All right, taken enough of your time. We've taken enough of the viewers' time. Will, Alex, thanks as always for your time.
Appreciate
all the time you gave us this season. We'll have you back on next season when we come back. Any parting thoughts from you guys? Let the people know where they can find your work, as if they don't know already.
Go ahead.
Yeah, of course, man. As you can see on Alex's hat, hello and welcome. You know, we're going out on summer league, so you know if you ever want Raptors coverage, you know if you want to sit down with Elijah Martin one-on-one, the Raptors 39th pick, you're gonna get it on.
Hey, we recently sat down with Bobby Webster, did a great interview.
Maybe we could have led with that. To be honest.
Check out our hello and welcome YouTube channel, subscribe on podcast. And go Wizards, man. Make Washington great again.
Wow. Well, more importantly, you know, anytime for you, Cash. Whenever you call, we're going to be here for you. Big shouts to you for having us on the show all season.
Appreciate you.
It's always great to chop it up, man.
Appreciate you guys. Right back at you. All right. For William Lou, for Alex Wong, for Zach and Adrian in the control room, my name is Joseph Casciaro. This has been The Unfiltered Show. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.